Here's a quick tip on bouncing to disk in Pro Tools. If you're not familiar with the process, what this really means is taking your song and mixing it down to a stereo track. Now, bouncing to disk in Pro Tools is pretty much a what you hear is what you get process. So any of the tracks that are playing in your session, including things like volume and plugins, will be part of the bounced file. If you were to mute a track, it would not be included in the bounce to disk process. The first thing I always like to do before I bounce the disk is zoom out a little bit, and that's because we need to define the length of the bounce. If I only had this much selected, that range would be what was bounced to disk. So I like to go to the very end of the song, maybe a little extra, and click and drag across the timeline till I get to the beginning. Now Pro Tools knows when to start and when to stop the bounce process. Then we can go to File, Bounce to Disk. The Bounce dialog window gives you a number of choices. The first parameter is what the source is. That is normally your stereo outputs or the main outputs you're using for your mix. If you're not sure that that's the bounce source, jump over to your mix window and check. Are all your outputs going to your main outs? Next we can choose our file format, WAV, AIFF, which is a common Mac format, or MP3. For format we can choose mono, multiple mono, which means a stereo pair, a left file and a right file, or typically the best choice is interleaved. That means one file containing left and right information for a stereo track. We can choose our bit depth and sample rate. We can choose share options like SoundCloud and Gobbler if you have an account. And then you can make your file name. I always like to give the file name something distinct so that I can easily find it and I'll remember what it is. Then I can choose where I want this to be saved. By default, Pro Tools will try to save it into your bounced files folder in the session folder, but you could save it anywhere on your computer. A lot of times if I want to get to it quickly, I'll just save it to my desktop. I can move it later. I'll use the current folder, I check all these options again, and then I click Bounce. Now I stopped that, but you can hear that as I was bouncing, Pro Tools was playing the song. An extra option I could choose is an offline bounce. What's happening here is that it's processing the audio as what's known as a batch process. So you're not hearing it play, it's calculating the length of the song and doing everything internally. This method is typically faster than the traditional real-time bounce, depending on the speed of your computer. And now the process is complete. And now I can locate the file on my desktop, double-click it. On a Windows machine, Windows Media Player will typically open and play it for you. And there you have it. Thanks for watching.